Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio. Today, the Russians continue toward war, and Trump continues toward sanctions and crushing the Russian economy. Also, the United States looks like it is preparing to do some very direct action in Venezuela. Also, out of Argentina, Javier Milei, a crushing victory for freedom and liberty down there in Argentina, and some great fallout already happening. And lastly, China. Will it be held accountable for what it's done, fomenting unrest in the United States, and also interfering with elections and COVID? We'll find out a little bit. And also our guest today will be talking about that, Trevor Loudon. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have the information before everybody else so that you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead, the times that are already upon us. But no fear. We were made for this. So follow us on patriotradio.us/Telegram. You can find us on there, Patriot Radio US, for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news 24/7. Which brings us to the next piece, and that is prayer. We need prayer and discernment in these times. patriotradio.us/prayer, or click on the QR code on your screen right there. For everybody watching on patriot.tv. Okay, you are not going to hear this probably anywhere else. Some people have talked about it, but we're going to talk about it today. That is UFOs. But first, we're going to go to the wisdom from the Word. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 21 says this: My son, see that they do not escape from your sight. Comply with sound wisdom and discretion. So here's what's being ginned up right now. There's going to be a UFO landing. Who knows about the fireballs in the air? And here's what you don't know. Studies that were done on alien abductees who cried out the name of Jesus. In all cases where that happened, the abduction stopped. That means it's demonic. They're preparing you for the physical manifestation of the demonic, which is why Christians everywhere are attacked, but particularly Christians that move in the power of the Holy Spirit and believe in deliverance. Because crying out the name of Jesus, speaking the name of Jesus, those spirits have to go. So, you're hearing it here on Patriot Radio ahead of time. The next 90 days, maybe even a little bit longer, maybe a year, there will be at some point the physical manifestation of a demon publicly amplified. Everybody's going to call it a UFO, alien, whatever, doesn't matter. And all we have to do is claim the authority that Jesus has already given us through and by his name. And not be deceived. This was told ahead of time. In fact, there was a book written about it called Childhood's End. There's a sci-fi series actually made about it, where a group of overlords who were going to take over the earth and couldn't reveal themselves because humanity wasn't ready to see them yet. When they did reveal themselves, well, it was Satan. Actually, a picture of Baphomet, to be more specific. Satan walking down the center aisle of the United Nations, holding a little boy's hand and a little girl's hand, just exactly like the statues and pictures of Baphomet. They're preparing us. Be ready. Don't be deceived. That brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing, coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
So will AI continue at an exponential rate? The answer is Well, very likely, yes. There'll be enough horsepower to fuel big corporations for years. But if they cannot see a return on their investments, then the AI industry could dry up like a potsherd. But what they're saying right now is that we will be fully quantum by 2032. In other words, quantum computing will be online, exponential progress, and everything that you can really fathom in our lives will occur because of AI at that time. Somehow, I don't think it's going to get that far. But as Christians, we take our wisdom from the Lord, not from a machine. Robots will help avoid hiring 600,000 workers, according to Amazon's recent statement. Just like we predicted, workers will be replaced by robots, especially places where illegals have been filling that role. The IUCN creates its first global policy of synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is the rearrangement of genetic material, DNA, RNA, and proteins between species and within species. This is the outcome of the NBIC, the Nanobio Info Cogno, or Convergent Science. NBIC serves transhumanism and technocratic goals. And what we're saying here with this is they are going ahead with synthetic biology and they're going to continue messing with it. Something catastrophic is probably going to happen before they are stopped. Why mirror life is causing some genetic scientists to freak out. Wow, what is mirror like? Or mirror life? Well, it's life where harmful bacterial strains that are easily defeated by our immune system could be maybe bypassed because DNA is being mirrored, but shifted just a little bit so our bodies won't see it. Again, playing around with genetics. WHO and the EU have launched an AI system to monitor social media and online misinformation in real time, which continues along the lines of one world government. And the solution to that is decentralization, not more centralization of monitoring of this, because that is what they're going to use central bank digital currencies to really do, monitor everything we spend our money on and assign it credit scores for us to have access to markets and goods and services. That brings us now to the China front. President Donald Trump has announced that he claims, quote, "We know everything about the 2020 presidential election being rigged and stolen," calling on the DOJ to investigate it with gusto, describing it as the biggest scandal in American history. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the bank accounts coming through Panama at that time, but how Venezuela very likely was a proxy for all this, and it's all going to center around Georgia and the voting machines in Georgia, which were very clearly linked. Now, many people have spoken about this, but it hasn't been proven because they needed access to the internals of these machines in Georgia to actually do an audit. I suspect it will come out that Vice President Pence betrayed his country by not doing that audit or allowing it to happen and instead certifying the election when he shouldn't have, and was actually briefed on this. I think we're going to have a lot of things come out, but either way, the question is raised. Did he betray his country? Did foreign powers have access to our voting system and intentionally audit it? And was Venezuela the proxy? And that's part of the reason that President Trump is going down there right now. I believe the next 30 days are going to be momentous for the United States of America. But now you have a little bit of a understanding of why President Trump is going down to South America and what it might entail. Ex-NSA chief General Tim Hawk warns China has infiltrated U.S. power, water, and transport systems for years. Election systems? With one Massachusetts utility confirming hackers gained access to its water tanks, raising fears they could poison the supply. Yeah, the Chinese are readying themselves for something, but remains to be seen whether China is in its internal power struggle going to actually be stable. for that to occur. Chinese nationals were arrested in Georgia, that's the country, for attempting to buy black market uranium. The suspects intended to buy the uranium for $400,000 and smuggle it to China through Russia. Georgian security and intelligence officials detailed further. Why would they do that? Unless they were attempting to buy uranium for a bomb that was not traceable back to China, and maybe detonate in the United States of America. Like Stanislav Lunev, a Soviet defector, warned Congress in 2000 about. That such nuclear devices actually already were on U.S. soil at that time. Nobody really took him seriously, except for a few congressmen and a few patriots at that time. Making concessions on Taiwan is the best way to convince China that it can invade the island with impunity. Marco Rubio, U.S. is not going to abandon Taiwan for trade benefits with China. No one is contemplating that, setting the stage for negotiations with Trump and Xi here in the next week. Trump said leaving Malaysia, he signed major trade and rare earth deals with Thailand and Cambodia. Also, he is off to Japan to meet their new prime minister and to negotiate further trade deals, but also some defense understandings with Japan in case China decides to invade. But what is really important about this is Trump is literally creating a new world order in economics. Now, that word new world order obviously has been thrown around by the globalists. He is trumping literally the globalists by creating rare earth supply chains and giving countries a choice. Chinese supplies or American markets, which one do you want? People are figuring out, countries are figuring out, leaders are figuring out that it is easier to find a different supply than a different market. Very interesting. That's part of this shift that's happening as Trump secures rare earth mineral supply to the United States. Also, as Claire Lopez brings up very clearly, the U.S. public health has never really talked about or investigated the bioengineering of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And will China be held accountable for engineering the virus? Something that should be brought up with President Trump privately with Xi, then publicly what the result was. Also, Japan's Nikkei is above 50,000 points for the first time as markets soar with the new prime minister in charge and the better relationships, clearer relationships with the United States. China is cutting back very substantially on its purchase of Russian oil. India is cutting back completely, according to President Trump. That right there will very likely bring the war with Ukraine to an end. We will see. That brings us now to the Middle East front. Somaliland president has called on the United States to officially recognize Somaliland as an independent nation, citing its 3 decades of peace, democracy, and stable governance. He described recognition as a moral and strategic imperative for regional stability and global democracy. Well, right across from Somaliland is Yemen, but also Somaliland has access to ports for, of course, bringing rare earth minerals to the United States and Europe. So very likely there will be a recognition of Somaliland in the very near future, and it will become a base of operation against jihadis in the Horn of Africa. Ankara court surprisingly dismissed the case to remove Turkish opposition leader. It dismissed the corruption case that sought to unseat the leader of the main opposition Republic People's Party, saying it had no substance. This guy was arrested on alleged vote buying at the CHP primary and is seen as the biggest opposition to Recep Erdogan. It'll be interesting to see if this guy lives for another year or two. Less than 7 hours before Trump's 48-hour deadline for Hamas to return the bodies of hostages, Hamas now claims that it is in the process of recovering between 7 and 9 bodies from various areas across the Gaza Strip. Israel claims that it has at least 5 already, maybe 7 that it has access to. Since the ceasefire began, Hamas has executed 80 to 100 people, not counting those who were abducted and disappeared. These are the words of Amin Abed, whose legs, teeth, and hands were broken by Hamas last year for criticizing the terror organization. One more reason Hamas's days are numbered, and it will very likely take the United States to step in with its big stick in Gaza, not necessarily with troops on the ground, but with its influence. Also coming out of Sudan, this is in the Middle East front because of the jihadis involved here. The strategic and capital city of North Darfur, called El Fasher, has been taken by the Rapid Support Forces. These are Muslim Brotherhood-aligned forces, and we now have videos that are too graphic. I'm not going to show them on Patriot Radio. Too graphic of massacres happening of civilians now that they have taken over. These jihadis, everywhere they go, that's exactly what they do. Take over a village and they kill everybody in it, especially Christians. Cameroon's Constitutional Council has declared a 92-year-old Paul Biya re-elected for the 8th term. He's been in power since 1982 and faces accusations of electoral fraud and voter intimidation. Opposition leaders have called the results a theatrical farce, and unrest has started in that country. We're probably going to see that continue, but Trump weighs in. Be interesting to see if Cameroon has any rare earth minerals. Probably does. And if peace comes there quickly. After the break, more from the Russia front as Russia continues toward war, but also its economy continues toward failure.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with the Russia front. President Trump has criticized Russia's Burevestnik. Burevestnik? I think they need a better name for it. Missile tests, reminding the Russian leader that U.S. nuclear submarines are off their shores. He should end the war, Trump told reporters. Quote, a war that was supposed to last a week has been going on now for almost 4 years. He should focus on that, not on testing missiles. End quote. Quote, they know we have a nuclear submarine right off their shores. It doesn't need to travel 8,000 miles. Just as they don't need to play games with us, we don't play games with them. We test missiles all the time. End quote. Some pretty strong words as Trump continues to ratchet up the pressure, especially economically, on Russia. Putin has said that he is now terminating the plutonium disposal agreement with the United States. It's kind of a small treaty, but he's continuing to double down. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones hit a Russian army fuel depot in Starobilsk, Luhansk Oblast last night, sparking a major fire as they continue attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. And there's been a surge of unexplained fires and arsons hitting key Russian infrastructure, targeting relay cabinets, electrical panels, and railway systems. As you can see here, according to Ukrainian intelligence and local sources, the incidents have been reported from Moscow to Irkutsk, disrupting logistics and straining power networks. Europe is still the largest LNG customer, buying about half of Moscow's liquefied gas exports. These purchases continue to feed the Kremlin's war budget, and I suspect that Trump is going to be, again, bringing this up to our partners in Europe, our allies in Europe, that if they cut down, it's actually going to end the war. China, as you can see by that chart, still the largest buyer of oil products. India, number 2. Turkey, number 3. LNG, EU is number 1. China is number 2. And Turkey is number 3. Coal, China is number 1. India is number 2. And Turkey is number 3. You see this. This is part of the negotiations that are going to happen with China. And as Trump said, India has committed to cutting back dramatically on its Russian gas and Russian oil imports. According to a new investigation by LRT, Baltic companies are secretly fueling Russia's shadow fleet. So now you have Europeans not only buying, but also secretly fueling Russia's shadow fleet. 2 tankers, Rena and Zircon, refueled 159 vessels linked to Moscow's shadow fleet in 10 months, helping it evade Western sanctions. Suspect Trump is going to crack down on that as well. Meanwhile, the Russian stock market continues a massive downward trend, and President Putin has begun to fear a coup due to the worsening economic situation, according to the Telegraph. This may be why he just recently had a conference with military leaders to spin up successes on the front that really aren't big successes for Russia. Again, 4 years on, still the supposedly best military in the world by some people, second best by others, can't defeat Ukraine. Those are objective facts on the ground, really actually disproving several pundits out there who kept saying that Kyiv was going to fall in 72 hours. We need to look at this objectively, not emotionally. Ukraine has held the line. Yes, it has been through Western help. But the Russians are the ones that started this. By the way, in violation of an agreement in Budapest. So I suspect President Trump knows and has some intelligence on the Russians' long-term strategy on this issue that's gotten to him. And he understands that Putin is just playing with him with words, and he wants him to be serious. So he will continue to ratchet up sanctions and continue to ratchet up pressure until that actually happens. Also, the Lithuanian president has called a long-term closure of the border with Belarus and a reduction of transit links with Russia's Kaliningrad region. He's called for these. It's happening right now. Lithuania has also prepared a plan to completely close its land border with Belarus, the prime minister announced. So, we're going to see continued locking down of borders by the Baltic states. Now, shifting gears to France, an Algerian woman was sentenced to life for brutally murdering a 12-year-old schoolgirl in an occult ritual. Just a quick commentary here as a Christian, as a pastor. You'll see these occult rituals becoming more and more prevalent as the demonic is spun up. The reason the demonic is being spun up right now is because Jesus Christ is already on the move. Holy Spirit is already on the move. So as this continues, don't be shocked by this. Just recognize that there is a huge component of Satanism that is behind the jihadis, the communists. We're seeing something in the spiritual manifesting in the physical. And Jesus Christ in Luke 10:19 gave us all authority over all the power of the evil one. Also, the man who funded Rose City Antifa in Portland and brought European Antifa terror tactics to the United States says he's now working with kids in Sweden and has a salary from Swedish taxpayers. Perhaps that should be on the discussion block for our diplomats to cease relations with Sweden until they take care of these Antifa founders and enablers. UKIP was supposed to march in one of London's most Bangladeshi areas yesterday, but was banned by police. But just in case Antifa, far-left activists, and Islamist gangs appeared on the scene and were allowed to march, the Islamists chanted something about a snack bar, annoying some of the leftists. But yet they were marching together. The jihadis and the communists are working at the local level seamlessly. Here is one more example. Huge electoral victory. I love this. This is the South America front. Huge electoral victory for Javier Milei in the midterm elections. His party won 41% of the votes. Their seats will increase from 37 to 101 in the parliament, and the number of senators has increased from 6 to 20. This is a huge referendum on his freedom and liberty platforms, and it looks like it's going to continue as we have now a solid ally in Argentina. But it also calls attention to the fact that the legacy media in Argentina faked polls in an attempt to rig the 2025 election results in Argentina. Even Milei's party can't believe their success, winning an unprecedented landslide. The media, as is being pointed out by Inevitable West, are doing the same across the Western Hemisphere. Don't pay attention to the polls. Get out and vote. And if anybody says, don't worry, we have a plan, you can sit back and relax. Don't listen to them either, because we are the plan. Thank you, President Trump, for trusting Argentine people. You are a great friend of the Argentine Republic. Our nations should never have stopped being allies. Our peoples want to live in freedom. Count on me to fight for Western civilization, which has succeeded in lifting more than 90% of the world's population out of poverty. This was after President Trump truth that congratulations, President Javier Milei, on his landslide victory in Argentina. He's doing a wonderful job. Our confidence in him was justified by the people of Argentina. Also on the South America front, Republican Senator Rick Scott. If I was Maduro, I would head to Russia or China right now. His days are numbered. Something is going to happen. An ominous warning that comes on the same day that the USS Gerald Ford was spotted leaving the Croatian city of Split in the Adriatic Sea, headed through the Mediterranean to the Caribbean to be off the coast of Venezuela in 2 or 3 weeks. That gives you a timeline. Maduro has countered by boasting he's moved thousands of Russian anti-air missiles to Venezuela's coast, the same missile systems that were defeated by the Israelis and many others in recent years. General Flynn brings up the revelation that the CIA was supposed to be fighting communism around the world, not funding it, because the U.S. State Department called in massive favors and leveraged personal connections to build voting machines for Lula-aligned Brazilian officials. And then the CIA warned Bolsonaro not to mess with or cast doubt on the new U.S. State Department secured voting machines determining his election. Well, that sounds like the very definition of foreign interference. Fortunately, it was our own intelligence community. It needs to still be massive reform of the CIA, and of all the agencies out there, we aren't hearing a lot about reform happening there. And I suspect that the spotlight is going to shift to the CIA to do exactly that. That brings us now to the national front. President Trump, one of the most difficult countries to deal with has been Canada. They did a fake ad yesterday. They were caught. That's dirty pool. They can't do that. They apologized, said they were going to take it down, left it up for 2 days. So I don't know when it's going to kick in. We'll see, but I don't really want to discuss it. He followed up by saying that he won't be meeting with Canada for a while. Just so arrogant, which has prompted massive crowds to flood the legislature grounds demanding independence for Alberta. So that is the part of Canada that is still free. There's a few other places in British Columbia, also in Saskatchewan, but what we're seeing here, and up in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon as well, but what we're seeing here is people on the ground in Canada saying we've had enough of the Marxists in power up there. Suspect we're going to see more of that. We'll keep our eyes on it. We'll let you know. Also, British political commentator who was called out by Laura Loomer and Amy Mack, who celebrated the October 7th terror attack, detained by the U.S. His visa was revoked, pending removal. This needs to happen more and more as these jihadis are being called out for their support of October 7th here in the United States. A visa is a privilege, not a right. So I don't know why anybody would really fight this. We need to be removing jihadis from our midst. That should be the policy for every American. There is definitely a chance, a high likelihood, there will be an October 7th style attack on Western soil, says journalist Emily Schrader, as she points out that it would be the first time we have seen a terror attack in Europe, but also the same warning is for the United States of America. One more reason we should be removing the jihadis. Western Union reports fewer U.S. dollars being sent home by migrants. That's some very good news. And President Biden came out of whatever hole he was hiding in and said, these are dark days. It's time to fight like hell. Trump must be doing something really well, and I would take this as a marker he is. Also, Minnesota man was arrested after posting a murder-for-hire TikTok video offering $45,000 bounty for Pam Bondi's assassination. This comes on the heels of other clear Marxist links to bounties being put up for ICE agents. Be interesting to see if there's links for this guy to the left. Gavin Newsom was called out by a San Joaquin County sheriff saying voting records show people from outside the country vote in California elections, including people from, wait for it, Pakistan. Quote, the online voter registration system, it seems to be an honor system. You'll be able to register and cast your vote if you don't live in the country. Anybody can put information in there to register to vote. All you have to do is click a box and say that you're not lying. And then you'll get an email from the Secretary of State or something in the mail saying, thank you for registering to vote. There you are. I suspect there's going to be other sheriffs coming out about this too. And that's what needs to happen at the local level. We need to be calling out, and they need to be called out on this stuff. It should be U.S. citizens voting in elections. It should be U.S. citizens determining the proportions for representation around the country. What you're seeing with the redistricting is just a rebalancing of this because the Democrats had a two-pronged approach. First, they tried to bring together what they called their Rainbow Coalition, which were minority communities, LGBTQ, etc., and then also illegal immigrants to vote in elections. That was their strategy. President Trump has seen this, and he is trying to rebalance our elections to be free and fair so that every American has one vote and has their vote count. That's fair and proper representation according to the Constitution. This is also why you're going to see voting systems change and shift back to in-person voting processes. This is just part of it. Everybody needs to know that. Dale Bigtree has come out with a new film, An Inconvenient Study, and the questions raised about vaccination in this film need to be seriously considered by policymakers. I would strongly encourage everybody to watch it. Absolutely incredible, especially the undercover footage that he has in there. Why are we importing people who can't feed themselves? We're hearing all about the EBT system is going to go kaput here on November 1st, but who actually are part of this system? Well, Afghan households, Somali households, Iraqi households, Dominican households, and Caribbean households are the top 5. Perhaps we should not allow people in the country that aren't bent on securing themselves. Interestingly enough, Ukrainian immigrants there were not on the list. Again, objective facts here. Trump administration is preparing to surge illegal alien arrests even higher now that 175,000 Americans have applied to work for ICE. Over 2 million illegals are gone so far in 270 days, and he wants to ramp that up again to destroy this strategy against our elections here in the United States of America. So we're going to see a huge surge here over the next year, probably starting after the new year. Trump's citizenship audit will cut Section 8 housing and other benefits to illegal immigrants to make it less friendly, but this is taking away the incentives for people to come across the border. I mean, there were sheets and websites even showing all the benefits that people would get if they illegally crossed into the United States of America. So part of the strategy has always been and should always be to deprive illegals of having incentives to break the law. Just makes sense. And lastly, coming to us from Lara Logan, a very good, very encouraging picture of thousands of young Christians at a high school football stadium in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Praise to Jesus. Amen. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio. And we have our guest next, Trevor Loudon.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with our guest today, Trevor Loudon. He's an expert on communism and communist networks. TrevorLoudon.com, keywiki.org. He's the author of many books, but my favorite are The Enemy Inside the United States, Inside the Church, and everywhere else they've infiltrated. Trevor, thanks again for coming on to Patriot Radio today.
Always a pleasure, Matt. Great to catch up. Thank you.
So Antifa, you and I have talked for years about Antifa, even before it was cool. And now everybody's an Antifa expert. And then there's some people saying that Antifa really is just an idea. It's an amorphous, decentralized, we hear that word thrown around quite a bit, group of characters who are just pushing back against the system out of their youthful exuberance. What say you?
I'd say it's a bit more than that. It's like calling McDonald's just an idea. You know, it operates a bit like a franchise in a way. Like different parts of the country, Antifa will be slightly different. And like in Western Washington, you might find a lot of Eastern Washington, you might find a lot of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America members involved, and they will overlap with Socialist Rifle Association, people who actually train with guns for the revolution. Other parts of the country, it'll be different anarchist groups or maybe some revolutionary communist party types. So it's like we saw the No Kings. You know, No Kings was a gathering of communists, socialists, radical church people, left-wing Democrats, union people, all the local hardcore leftists. Well, Antifa is the violent, militant wing of that same movement. So it will have different constituencies, but it's tied to overseas groups. It's tied to radical overseas groups in the Middle East, Latin America. There's worldwide networks of these people. So it's way more than an idea. It's a hardcore left-wing army armed up, aiming for revolution. These are the street thugs of the communist movement.
So you hear them say, well, you know, they're not Democrats. These are anarchists, to be accurate. But really, they're communists. I mean, it was born out of the Communist Party. It was born out of Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, look, the original Antifa came about in the 1930s in Germany. It was the militant wing of the German Communist Party. It was explicitly a wing of the German Communist Party, and they were fighting Hitler's black shirts. So you'd have the black shirts would be on the streets marching, and the communists would send their Antifa, their anti-fascists, to fight the black shirts. And when the black shirts, the fascists, won, many of the Antifa people went from communism to fascism. It wasn't much of a jump. You know, it was just one going from one street gang to another. So, and all the way through, Antifa has been a communist organization, a communist with a lot of anarchist type streaks to it as well. And all anarchists are communists who don't want to go through the stages of development. They don't want to go capitalism, socialism, communism. They just want to tear the system down and go straight to communism.
So about 5 years ago, we broke a story here on a document that we acquired on remote uprising support teams, or RUST teams. In it, they had translated into German and Arabic, which I found very fascinating, their action cards at the end and who to call if they got arrested. These remote uprising support teams had very detailed military-style teams to monitor police scanners, monitor social media, action teams, even OPSEC, and they use that word, by the way, OPSEC teams to police their own internally. And it was very clear that there is very high-level organization going on here. And I hear constantly this drumbeat of decentralization. What do you know about their organizational structure? And is this really that decentralized?
Well, as you say, you talk about OPSEC. Well, that means operational security. So they are very big on that. They try to make sure their names are kept out of the media. They will not use their real names. They will try and keep off social media or anything revealing off social media. So they are very well organized from that point of view. They are trained militarily, trained to disrupt, trained to attack, trained to avoid detection. Yeah, they are very well trained, and so they are, as I say, they are tied to foreign groups like the Black Bloc, which was really the beginnings of Antifa in this country. I had a friend who was involved in that in Louisiana. They went down to Louisiana after the hurricanes in 2005. to try and create an anarchist city in New Orleans. Well, while they were there, some of them went down to Venezuela, and Hugo Chavez tried to recruit them, to recruit my friend to set up a guerrilla army in the swamps of Louisiana. So look, they are tied to these foreign networks. They're tied to the communist movement. They are tied to local Democratic Party operatives, and also to groups like Democratic Socialists of America. At one point, the Antifa in Orlando was just the local branch of Young Democratic Socialists of America. They were the Antifa branch in that area. So it's organized around existing hubs, various communist groups, anarchist groups, networked across the country, more or less like a franchise. Like these people will be indivisible one day, they'll be no kings the next, and on Sunday they'll be Antifa. They will put on a different uniform. So they are tied into all the major left-wing networks, and they're tied into sources of left-wing money, and they're also tied into foreign hostile governments.
So you mentioned Venezuela. I want to get into this right now. Arguably, Cuban intelligence runs Venezuela, but I want to get into...
And the Chinese. Yeah.
And the Chinese. So what is the tie through Venezuela as a hub to try to take down the United States of America? Describe that for me.
Well, it's completely a hub. Okay, here's another radical group. Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They're a Maoist communist group. They are the people who organized the George Floyd riots across the country. And they are also the people that tried to start the riot in Los Angeles, the anti-ICE riots in Los Angeles, and were ready to do it across the country had Trump not shut them down. They have sent at least 5 delegations to Venezuela in the last couple of years. They have meetings with Venezuelan consular officials in Chicago and things like that. Venezuela is absolutely a hub of revolutionary activity against the United States, 100%. And it's a communist government. A friend of mine was just talking to a guy who worked under Hugo Chavez, and people would say, Hugo Chavez, he's a left populist. And this guy said to my friend, he said, no, he was a hardcore Marxist-Leninist who dreamed of invading and conquering the United States. His main goal in life was to destroy the United States with the help of his Cuban and Russian and Chinese friends. So look, like Venezuela, I can understand why Trump is going after Venezuela right now. Venezuela is absolutely dangerous to this country. Venezuelans, when the borders were open, were sending this country gang members, mental hospital inmates, criminals, just to create chaos here. They are an enemy nation. There's no doubt about that.
So the question then is, who is funding this? Is it a foreign country that is funding some of this, or countries?
Well, look, there was recently a case where a Chinese businessman was caught stocking a warehouse that was supplying Antifa with weaponry and logistical equipment, etc. We know some of it is coming through Neville Singham, who is his father was in the Black Revolutionary movement in Detroit in the early 60s, very heavy Marxist. Neville Singham became a computer billionaire actually, and now lives in Shanghai married to Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, another very radical pro-Venezuela group. But he is funding a lot of the radical activity in this country, a lot of it, from his base in China. And I'm sure through his cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party. But a lot of the funding is also coming through the foundations, Ford, Rockefeller, that sort of thing, and also through local government, through and labor unions. If you're paying labor union fees you're funding the revolution. If you're in a blue city like Portland, Oregon, your city government is funding the revolution.
When we come back from the break, more with Trevor Loudon. We're going to be talking about the color revolution in the United States of America and what we can expect up and into 2028.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling VERITY Metals today.
And we're back with Trevor Loudon, trevorloudon.com and keywiki.org. So Trevor, they picked the color yellow. I actually was kind of happy they picked yellow for a bunch of different reasons because it's easy to mock. But it really seems the indicators are pointing toward the culmination of a communist revolution in the United States right around 2028 or right in the wake of 2028. How are you reading this?
Yeah, well, a lot of the left-wing groups are already planning for a general strike in 2028, a nationwide strike, and that's often a prelude to a revolution. But they're absolutely working on that. Look, the No Kings protests. That is what they're trying to do is build this. They're trying to build an anti-fascist coalition. See, in their minds, Trump and Republicans are fascists, and anything goes when you're fighting fascists. Anybody who remembers the old show Hogan's Heroes back from the 60s,
Yeah.
the American prisoners in a prison camp, and they would sabotage the Nazis, they would kill the Nazis, they would steal from the Nazis, and we'd all laugh. Because when they're Nazis, you can do anything to them. So if Trump's a Nazi, Republicans are Nazi, conservative Christians are Nazis, ordinary Americans are Nazis, it's okay to steal elections. It's okay to kill them. It's okay to steal from them. It's okay to sabotage. It becomes morally okay. So that what they're trying to do is build No Kings, the Black Lives Matter types, Antifa types, to completely destabilize the country, sabotage elections, destroy the legitimacy of elections, so that by 2028 rolls around, the country's in complete chaos. So you've got, we've already seen the beginnings of this. And then we add the Muslim radicals into this who are already talking about jihad in America and terrorist attacks. You add all that, plus the Chinese communist operatives already here, the military people here, plus the Russian Spetsnaz, plus Hezbollah, plus Hamas that are already here, plus the large pool of illegal immigrants are going to try and resist deportation. We are heading into a revolutionary period. Absolutely we are. And people should be understanding this. What we've seen with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and things like that that's just the beginning of what we're going to see.
So that brings the question of how do you stop it? What can be done to stop this, to deconstruct, disrupt these networks across the country? I know Trump has said that the FBI is looking into it. The IRS is looking into it. It doesn't ever seem to move as fast as you or I would like. But the point is what can the average American do also, or local governments do to help in this fight?
Well, do you know how much the FBI knows about Antifa?
I would guess nothing. Yep.
Nothing. Because they've been directed for the last 10 years on conservative Christians, white nationalists, the imaginary white nationalists, and they have been totally ignoring the communist and Antifa type groups. They have no clue. So we're not, and they're going after them now. They're investigating them now. That's true. But so we got to understand this violence is likely to occur because the FBI is not equipped to deal with it. So we have to be looking to our local sheriffs. We have to be looking to our local community groups. Every county, the conservatives in every county, and I'm sure they are, and probably in your county, should be getting together and deciding what do we do when trouble goes down? Where do we rally? Are we going to be deputized by the sheriff? Is the sheriff reliable? What points do we have to defend? What power, what valuable power assets do we have to defend? How are we going to have medical stocks? How are we going to handle a power outage? All of this kind of stuff should be part of our vocabulary right now, because, and I would like to be in 2 years' time to be regarded as the biggest fool in America because none of this happened.
Right.
But the more organized we get now, the less likely it is to happen, and the less likely it is to be severe enough to really plunge the country into chaos. But, we've on the world stage, we've got the Russians and the Chinese and Iranians all want to cause major trouble here, all of them. And we got to understand all of this activity that we're seeing is directed by foreign countries. This Black Lives Matter was a Chinese operation. Much of the disinformation that's confusing us is coming from Russia, and Iran is directing and helping the Muslim radicals. So, and Venezuela is right in the mix, as are the Cubans and the Nicaraguans as well. So, yeah, it's local, look after what you can control, work with your sheriff, make sure you're armed, make sure you have medicine. How are you going to handle a power outage? How are you going to defend your community? How are you going to defend your local power plant? How are you going to defend that vital bridge? All of this should be being thought about now so you can defend your county.
And sheriffs can deputize under emergency response teams effectively in modern day policies. Yeah.
But you got to work out first, is your sheriff worth following? Is your sheriff a good guy who understands, or is he some liberal sociology graduate who has no clue? Because if he is, you're going to have to organize independently.
So back in May, I stood across from the Antifa ground commander, looked him in the eyeballs as they charged the lines of that peaceful Christian worship and prayer gathering that we were having in Cal Anderson Park. And I looked, and they were deadly serious about what they were doing, and they were sold out for their cause. In fact, there's a book written about that, The Whole of Their Lives, Benjamin Gitlow and the whole Gitlow case. But the
great book, a great book, yeah.
So but the point is are we that willing to defend the Republic? And what would be your encouraging word today to people to make them understand that this is a fight to the death for the United States of America?
Well, it is. And I want to say this, I think to get through the coming period, we are going to need God's help. But, and I would say this, if you look at the Bible, if you look at the American Revolution, if you look at David versus Goliath, if you look at Gideon's army, God tends to help brave and courageous people, faithful and courageous people. God hasn't got a great track record of helping whingers and losers and cowards. In fact, in the book of Revelation, the first people that go to hell is a list of people who go to hell. And the first people are the cowards and the faithless. Because if you're a coward, you're telling God you have no faith. Because if you really believe what you say you believe, you'll be scared of nothing on this earth. So I think what I say is this. I think this country is supposed to stand. This country is supposed to lead. This country is supposed to spread freedom and the gospel across the world. But it takes us to do our part. And I think there were many miracles that happened in the founding of this republic, and the famous fog that came down on New York Harbor just at the right time to save George Washington's troops, and many other things. So I think the most critical thing right now is to understand we are meant to be free. We are meant to save this country for our children, our great-grandchildren, and for other freedom-loving people around the world. That's our job. So if we stand in faith and courage, and we are really brave and bold about this and take this seriously, I expect we will prevail, and we will have, our enemies will be confounded. things will go our way. Well, that bullet that hit Trump's ear,
Yeah.
like if that bullet had gone a foot wide, it would have been a big incident. Okay. If it had gone 6 inches the other way, it would have killed him. It went just at the right place to draw blood and give Trump the opportunity to drag himself up and fight. If that was not a signal that God does not want this country lost, I do not know what you have to have.
Right. Amen.
That was courage right there. And that's the kind of inspiration. That's the kind of thing we need. This country is going to be saved by truth, faith, and courage. We gotta have courage, because courage is proof of faith, and faith pleases God. That's what I would say to patriots out there.
God always raises up the right people at the right time, and you're one of them, Trevor Loudon. Thanks for joining me on Patriot Radio today, and always appreciate your perspective.
Well, you're certainly one of them, Pastor Matt. You certainly are. So I appreciate the opportunity.
God bless, and keep up the fight. TrevorLoudon.com, keywiki.org. So what can you do? Go talk to your local sheriff. Ask them what they know about Antifa. Ask them what they know about the Socialist Rifle Association, the John Brown Gun Club, Redneck Revolt, and the Democrat Socialists of America, and Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and all of the other permutations. Ask them what they know. Ask them what they're doing about it. They are responsible and they are answerable to the citizens, and we, the people, are still the government of the United States of America. So be the government. Go ask the questions that need to be asked in this time. Ask them what they know about the foreign funding and direction of these things. Because if they don't know, you can educate them, but then they come to a decision. Are they going to investigate and do something about it or not? But at least you've done your job as a watchman or watchwoman on the wall. This is Matt Shea. Thank you so much for joining me on Patriot Radio today. May God bless all of you. And He is making this generation the greatest one. Keep up the fight.